Exit interviews are over. The season is behind us. It's time to look ahead. Why Jeff Weltman is going to keep to his North Star. A quick preview of the Orlando Magic's offseason and the latest free agency rumors on today's Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is May 7th and will be May 8th, 2024. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the senior writer over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can find me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, we're going to start talking and thinking about the offseason. It is a big one for the Magic. We'll start with what Jeff Weltman had to say at exit interviews on Monday, why he is sticking to the North Star, and we will explore all the different possibilities, those that are being reported, and yes, that the Magic may not do very much at all. We'll get to all that as an introduction. We're going to do plenty more. This is not supposed to be comprehensive. We'll get to more coming up here in just a moment. But first, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day, no matter when you listen to us, whether it's first thing in the morning, whether it's right when we upload. We truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. Remember, there's a great Locked On podcast covering every single team in the NBA. So search for Locked On and the team you're looking for. The Locked On Podcast Network, it's your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. Exit interviews are one of the few times that we get extended time with Jeff Weltman. And, obviously the season's over. Everyone's still kind of evaluating and processing what we just saw over the course of what was the last 89 games. We hit mission 83 very early there. Over the last 89 games, over the last 6 months. And now we have to sit and think. We have to sit and think, okay, what do we do next? And look, we're going to dive into every aspect of this, from what the Magic should do with their cap room, to trade opportunities, to what the Magic need. We're going to get to all that, and we're going to start with it tomorrow by talking a little bit more detail why the Magic lost their playoff series, because that's kind of where you start. Like, where did you fail? like what needs to improve? But Jeff Weltman has a lot of tools at his disposal. If it feels like it's a big summer, it's because it is a big summer. There is a lot that the Magic are going to be able to do, and a lot that the Magic do need to do this offseason, because Franz Wagner, Jalen Suggs are due extensions, so their salaries are about to take a major increase over the next after this season. Paolo Banchero is not too far behind them, so the Magic kind of are in their last free summer of cap room. In all, the Magic are estimated to have around $32 million is the number that I'm seeing. I haven't done the math myself in a while, but it's going to be somewhere between 28 and 32 million, 28 and 33 million. Let's give it an extra million there, but the Magic will have roughly $30 million in cap room to use this offseason. And that's obviously a ton of power. For a team that just got to the first round, that has their two top scorers, their three top scorers are all 22 and younger. For a team that is extremely promising, that has taken some tremendous strides already, this is a time to be aggressive. This is a time to really try and push the pedal down and add some key players or add important players that are going to set this team up and set this franchise up for the next 2 or 3 years. And look, it's still going to be about gradual improvement. This isn't something that's just, the Magic, I think, are hoping to have home court advantage next year. I think they're hoping to make it to the second round next year. That is very much in the offing for this team. And very much what this team wants to do next year. A lot of the talk at exit interviews was about, we need home court advantage next year. We saw the power of our home court. We know how good we are on our home court. No road team won in their series. Home court advantage matters. So I think that's going to be something that the Magic are the Magic are hoping to accomplish next season. So obviously there is a desire to continue to get better and advance further and all this stuff. And the Magic are going to have to add some pieces to the roster to do that. We'll get into some specific names here in a minute. We'll get into some specific names over the course of the next few weeks. Don't worry about that. What I want to worry about today is what Jeff Weltman said, what Jeff Weltman's philosophy is. And he put it pretty plainly. Quote, "We don't want to lose the North Star of our team. Our 3 leading scorers are 22 and under. I know there are a lot of good things that happened to our team this year. Now it is up to us to earn our way into repeating that. We don't take that for granted. There's a lot of work that needs to be done to keep our place held, and then we can build from there." That North Star, like that is, I think that is the biggest statement from Jeff Weltman, because we're going to get into some big names and maybe talk about why those names don't make sense for this Magic team and why it feels like it's noise or maybe it's real. We'll talk a little bit about that in here in a minute. But to me, Jeff Weltman saying we got to keep our North Star. To me, Jeff Weltman saying we need to do something, but quote, not at the expense of the things that cost us our DNA. There's a reason we were a good team this year, and we don't want to lose that, end quote. The Magic, we'll talk a little bit about the different paths the Magic can take, but at its core, Orlando knows they were a good team last year. Maybe they took advantage of Philadelphia being down, Indiana being up and down, Milwaukee being up and down. Maybe they took advantage of some things. But there's no reason to think the Magic won't get better. And so, as Jeff Weltman looks at the options available to him, and again, we're going to get into a lot of those here over the next few weeks. So if we're talking generally here, stay tuned, subscribe. We will talk more specifically coming up in the next few weeks. For Jeff Weltman, he has to look at what made this season successful. What has helped this team grow year over year over year over the last 3 years, and how to keep that while improving what they have so that they can take that important next step, so they can be a contending team again. To me, and let me just set this narrative now, to me, this offseason is very much about how can we add to the Magic? How can we add something that will improve this Magic team without compromising what made this team great? And by that, I mean the Magic were a top 3 defense in the league. How much can the Magic sacrifice their defense and still be what they were? Jamal Mosley said this when he was asked in exit interviews about adding new players. It's still about adding the right people. The people, the kind of person that will embrace the culture, a defensive-minded culture, a together culture, fit in with this group. It's still about finding those people and not disrupting the apple cart of the Magic will never have the chemistry they had this year again. They were a truly, truly, truly special team together. It's going to be hard to repeat that. But the Magic are going to have to add players, and they're going to have to fit in. They're not looking for a star to change their direction. They got one. His name's Paolo Banchero. He is awesome. We saw him in the playoffs. Franz Wagner is pretty good too. Jalen Suggs is pretty good too. The Magic aren't looking for something to upend or change the dynamic. They're looking for something to add to this team, to add to the DNA of this team, to what this team has accomplished and built over the last 3 years. They're looking for an extension of what they've done. And so as we sit here, and we're going to talk about some specific names here in a minute, as we sit here and think about what the Magic do next, it's still guided by what they've done already. It's still guided by where this team is at, what they've already accomplished, and what made them successful this year. This Magic team, has, I think, established a pretty firm culture. They have established an identity of who they are and what they're about on a day-to-day basis. It's not necessarily about what they play on what they do on the floor. It's the process of how they play, the process of how they work, how each of them puts that commitment in. That's who this team is. And as Jeff Weltman sits down and begins to go through the permutations and the opportunities that this team has to improve and looks at ways to improve, it's not to make the headlines. Headlines are the least important thing here. What the Magic will do, what Jeff Weltman will try to do, is he will try to build a team, to extend and grow this team that was so successful. And what he cannot do, and what I think he understands, it seems like he certainly understands he cannot do, is he cannot sacrifice what made this team special and can't sacrifice what this culture is to add someone that is just really talented. Because that's not going to work in the end. It takes a team to win a championship, and that's ultimately where we're trying to go. So, what's out there? We'll talk a little bit about the latest rumors that are backed by reporting, some of the names to keep an eye on as we begin to think about free agency. We're going to get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, it's time for a quick word from our friends over at DoorDash. Look, do you want to make your mom smile? Start Mother's Day, which is Sunday, by the way, with flowers or surprise her with gifts from the brand she loves delivered the very same day with DoorDash. DoorDash really allows you to shop anywhere. You can get thoughtful gifts she deserves with the convenience you need. Choose same-day delivery or schedule a week ahead for when flowers and gifts should arrive to her door with DoorDash. Shop with savings that would make her proud. With a Dash Pass membership, you'll save with a $0 delivery fee and reduce service fees on eligible orders from Dash Pass merchants that meet the minimum subtotal. Other fees, including a service fee, apply. Terms apply as well. Order now and get everything you need for Mother's Day on DoorDash. Use code LOCKEDONNBA to get 50% off your next order, up to $15 when you spend $15 more on your next flower, convenience, grocery, or retail order now on DoorDash. That's LOCKEDONNBA for that promo code. Order using DoorDash today. Terms apply. Today's episode of Locked On Magic also brought to you by our friends over at LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals who are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. I know for me as a job seeker on LinkedIn, it's so convenient. It's so easy. They give you all the information that you need, direct you directly to the website. You can even apply sometimes directly on LinkedIn. It's not just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive. And it's so easy to be a job seeker. So imagine what it's like to be someone looking to hire. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process that much better. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring, so why not you? Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. We want to thank you for making Locked On Magic part of your day. Every day if sports is a part of your day, you're probably tired of the shouting on the national sports networks. I am too. That's why I kind of tune them off and why I turn on the 24/7 sports streaming channel from Locked On, programmed to you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming from around the sports world. Locked On Sports Day brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news from local experts who know their team best, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So obviously, there is an anticipation. Again, we're going to get into the numbers. We're going to talk to some people. We're going to really dive into free agency here over the next few months. You know, we got till July 1st. We got 2 months until free agency really starts. We're going to get plenty of detail on that. Don't worry. This is your general introduction to what the Magic are kind of thinking and and how the Magic should approach free agency. But we do have some rumors that have been circling around this team for a while now. And even as this season got deeper into the playoffs, rumors have been just flying about the Magic. And some of them are, it's not that they're totally out of cloth or out of hand. I'll explain why I'm not sold on either of them, but we'll get to that here in a minute. The first came from Ramona Shelburne pretty much right after the LA Clippers got eliminated from the playoffs, reporting that the Philadelphia 76ers and the Orlando Magic are monitoring, I believe was the phrase that she used, the Paul George situation. According to Shams Charania of The Athletic and Stadium and all the other places that he writes, the Clippers have made contract offers to Paul George short of the max. He has declined those and appears to be trying to get one more max level contract from someone. Paul George would obviously, I think, be a really good fit for Orlando. Gives him another big wing who can attack off the dribble, get his own shot, is a very competent three-point shooter, solid defender, a star level player. And he's not an all-star anymore, but is a star level player. I'll get to why I think that's a weak spot here, but there's definitely something there. The Magic are one of the 3 teams in the league that are in the playoffs with cap room. There's going to be a lot of those kind of rumors shooting around. And I think that Paul George, while certainly still capable of taking over games, is probably better suited to be a secondary player. So playing off of a Paolo Banchero more than anything else. It's definitely something there. Paul George is kind of a model for a lot of players. He's like a 6'8", 6'9" kind of guard. Has a lot of guard skills. If he could still defend at a high level, he would definitely be a really strong player to add to the team. And so the idea of a Paul George, if the Magic want size, he gives you size at the guard spot, and potentially size at the guard spot. But we'll get to why I think he's not the answer here in a minute. The other rumor that was going around and has continued to go around and has been going around since really February, Shams Charania was the latest to report this, that the Magic and Klay Thompson have, quote unquote, mutual interest in each other as free agency approaches. Much like Paul George, Klay Thompson has not gotten the contract offer that he wants from the Golden State Warriors. And so there's at least some sense that he could look elsewhere. And obviously Klay Thompson is one of the great shooters in NBA history. Adding him to the Magic would give them a high volume shooter who could just hit shots, hit spot up shots. The Magic would have to change their offense a little bit to get him moving off of screens, which is not something they do very much. Like Franz Wagner is a cutter going to the basket, but he runs around flares and a lot of screening actions that this Magic offense doesn't do. So I would pause and present caution there. But again, the gravity would just be so huge. There's a difference between Franz Wagner shooting 1 for 15 and 0 for 5 from 3, and Klay Thompson going 0 for 7 or 0 for whatever he did against the Sacramento Kings in the play-in tournament. Both had bad playoff outings, but there's a difference with the gravity that Klay Thompson can create. And so there's definitely something there. Here's my problem with both of these moves. Both of them have injury histories and they're a little bit older. Not that the Magic should be exclusively looking young. I think looking for some veterans would help this team tremendously. I am a big subscriber to the Horace Grant theory. If the Magic can find a Horace Grant, can find someone who's been there, bring a little bit more seriousness to this team, a little bit more kind of wisdom in a meaningful role. Again, it's Joe Ingles is great. Gary Harris is great. Joe Ingles is playing 15 minutes a game. Like, bring me a veteran who's been there that's in the starting lineup. I would love that. And so Klay Thompson, to some extent, Paul George would bring that level of seriousness to this team and a level of purpose to this group that they don't have right now because, again, they're just so young. Having said all that, they're both injury prone. Like Klay Thompson still, has not been the same player since coming back from the injury. Paul George is little, he plays a lot. And it's not that he doesn't play, but he's had little nicks and cuts. These are two guys in their mid-30s. So essentially you're taking this summer where you have your last kind of chance to spend a lot of money And you're spending all of it on these two players. Now the Magic can open up to, I think, $45 to $50 million of cap room. There's, they could waive Jonathan Isaac. They could waive Mo Wagner. There is ways for them to get more money, but I don't believe they want to spend all their cap room on one guy. If you're signing Paul George or Klay Thompson, you're spending all $30 million on that one player. Then you'll get to you might spend the room exception first, and you might spend your non-taxpayer MLE. So it's not like you don't have money to spend, but the Magic, and Jeff Weltman noted this too, the Magic also have to be careful because you're going to throw a lot of money out there now, but then you're adding on, you're doubling Franz Wagner's salary, you're doubling Jalen Suggs' salary, you're doubling, maybe even tripling Paolo Banchero's salary here in the next 2 years. Money's going to start getting a little tight. And so, yes, these are big names, and I'm not going to begrudge anyone for going after big names. People are really getting star obsessed. They're like, oh, we could get a Paul George. That'd be great. We could get a Klay Thompson. That would be great. I don't want to douse that fire. The Magic are in these conversations. The fact the Magic are in these conversations is a sign of how much this team has grown. But I don't think that's the way Jeff Weltman operates. I think he's usually a little bit more cautious. He's certainly a little more cautious. We can all agree on that. He's a little bit more deliberate with how he spends money and how he kind of maps things out. And obviously he's got to start mapping things out a little bit because the Magic's payroll is about to balloon a lot. He's got obviously a question with Jonathan Isaac next summer as well, which we'll see what happens with that. Wendell Carter is really cheap right now. He isn't always going to be this cheap. And certainly, maybe we're looking for an upgrade at center. We'll talk about that issue and that question coming up here in a minute, coming up here in the very near future. That's definitely on my list of things we'll get to here in free agency. There's a lot of questions here. There's a lot of things that the Magic are going to be sorting through. Essentially, this is what I'm going to get at. The Magic are kind of committing to their roster for the next 3 years this season, this summer. And by that, I mean, you'll have some pieces you can trade around. You're kind of setting up your chessboard for the next 3 years because the Magic aren't going to spend money next year. Next year is about Franz and Jalen Suggs extensions kicking in and Paolo Banchero signing his max extension. We all assume Paolo's getting a max. That's what next summer is about. And, maybe the Magic don't do extensions with Franz and Jalen knowing, hey, we can save that for next year. We know that the bird rights will be what the bird rights are. But we can get something done and that'll actually help us a little bit with money there because, the cap is going to spike here. It's going to go up, but it's limited to 10% increases. So it's $141 million this year. It can only increase to 156 million in 25. So there'll be some money to play around with. I'm not but these are the things that Weltman is going to be planning and thinking about. So if you ask me, just early free agency preview here, I don't think Paul George and Klay Thompson are the answers. I think that both Thompson and George's representatives are doing their job. There's only 3 teams in the league with cap space that are winning and in the playoffs. The Thunder, the Sixers, and the Magic. Why the Thunder and to some extent the Spurs with Victor Wembanyama aren't being connected in these kinds of ways is a little bit confusing. I think that essentially your 4 teams that are going to be in play for all the big free agents are those 4 teams. And I think a lot of us expect Philadelphia to have first dibs. Like they're closer to a championship with Joel Embiid and now Tyrese Maxey. I kind of suspect Paul George is going to end up with them, and I suspect Klay Thompson's going to work something out with the Warriors. This is all about leverage at this point. So it's not to say that the Magic aren't interested or I have any information saying the Magic aren't interested. I am just very skeptical. I think it is far more likely the Magic try and spend around $20 million a year, get like a 3 for 62 or something like that for Malik Monk. With the Magic, I'm skeptical they go for D'Angelo Russell, but I could see them going for like a 3 for 54 or 3 for 60 on Tyus Jones. And maybe not 60 for Tyus Jones, but like a 3 for 54 with Tyus Jones with some options in there. I could see them more chasing after a big like Nick Claxton. Essentially what I'm saying is I think it's far more likely the Magic's big free agent signing is in that $15 to $20 million range with them and then again, they have $32 million, and then them adding 2 players at that $8 million range or that $7 to $8 million range to add some further depth to their roster. If you ask me, that's the plan for the summer. That's where I'm going. So the free agents that I'm looking at are Malik Monk. I am looking at Tyus Jones. I'm looking at Nick Claxton. I'm looking at Isaiah Hartenstein. I'm looking at more trades for wings. I am looking a little bit D'Angelo Russell, but I think he's too rich, and I don't think he's quite what the Magic are looking for. Those are the deals that those are the players I'm looking at. And obviously, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into needs and how to fill those needs and what the Magic can do there. But I don't think the Magic are breaking the bank for one guy. They have a lot of things they need to fill in. And so I don't think Clay and PG are the answer. And so obviously that leads to what is, I think, Magic fans' worst fear. Could the Magic just stand pat? We'll talk about why that isn't the option, but why it's closer than you think. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, it's time for a quick word from our friends over at Monopoly Go. Look, we're taking a timeout here. We're checking the replay because we got to talk more about Monopoly Go. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for time tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock, and you're playing Monopoly. It's everyone's favorite board game that criticizes capitalism. And there's so much to get because in true capitalist form, you can get unique stickers. You can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes, cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with, hilarious emojis for taunting your friends when you smash their buildings, or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine. And there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it now for free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. So everyone's had a chance now to listen to Jeff Weltman during exit interviews and hear what he had to say. And, it's very important to remember that, Jeff Weltman cannot tamper. He can't talk about other players until they're signed and under contract. And certainly he is trying to leave all doors open. And so as he's spoken to the media and as he's spoken over the last few days, over the last few weeks even, fans get a little restless, and deservedly so, because Jeff Weltman is not he's not a wheeler and dealer. Yes, he has made some big trades. Let's not pretend otherwise. But Weltman seems to be a general manager who is more calculated, who is more focused on the people and the composition of a team, more than saying, we're going to go get this name, or we're going to do something because it's trade deadline day. Even though he's made a trade on every deadline day except for this year's, there's this perception that he doesn't do anything. On top of all this, he's very quiet. The Magic don't leak anything. They're very, very good about keeping information internal. And so really anytime he speaks, we're just grabbing any clues we can. And so I have seen and I have read from fans who are, and frankly, Weltman said it himself, there is always the chance the Magic don't do anything. As Weltman put it on Monday, all we did this summer was add 2 rookies who didn't play and Joe Ingles, and we jumped from 34 to 47 wins. Who's to say that wouldn't happen again? I don't think it would. As Scott Skyles, I remember when Scott Skyles coached the team at exit interviews of his lone season as head coach. He said getting from 25 to 35 wins is real easy. Getting from 35 to 45 is really hard, and 45 to 55 is even harder. The next 10 wins are the hardest to get. So look, I'm not going to sit here and pretend otherwise. The Magic need to add another starter. They need a starter level player. They need to, I think, further bolster their depth. They need some diversity of their attack. We'll talk more about that tomorrow. They need to add something to this team. But I will agree with this. They don't need to add much, at least not at this stage of the proceedings. This is still an incredibly young team. I believe it's the fourth youngest team in the NBA this season. In the playoffs, only the Oklahoma City Thunder are younger. And actually, I think the Thunder are not the youngest team in the playoffs anymore because of the Gordon Hayward trade. This is a team that should grow naturally. And, Jeff Weltman took some heat from Magic fans for saying this, but, he said, I don't think this team is bereft of shooting. I will point out that the Magic were 14th in the league in three-point field goal percentage from January 1st to the end of the year. That's like 3/8 of the season. It's a little bit more than half of the season, about half the season. That's not insignificant. Obviously, though, the Magic missed shots in the playoffs. We all know this team needs shooting, and I think even Weltman would acknowledge that. But having said that, there's a lot of reasons to think, okay, Franz Wagner will bounce back from a bad shooting year. Jalen Suggs can hopefully repeat and continue to improve as a shooter. Jett Howard will be in the mix next year, hopefully. It is pretty linear that young players get better at shooting as they get older. And so there is something to say the Magic don't need to do a lot because they should get better naturally. Their players should get better just by playing more, just by having this experience. If they are the kind of workers and player and people that this front office believes and is invested in, then they should be better next year. It's that simple. I'm not going to sit here and say that the Magic should roll things back and just stand pat and do this all over again. They do need to add an injection of something. They do need to add a shooter, a shooting guard. They do need to add these things over the course of the year, of the offseason. We'll talk about a lot of things. We're going to start addressing and talking about some of these needs by talking about where the Magic fell short in the playoffs. We'll do that on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Magic. But standing pat is an option. It's not the option I would take, and I'll say this: it's probably a hybrid. The Magic probably aren't looking to completely reshape this roster. They're probably looking to add one starter to replace Gary Harris, but I'm sure they would love to bring Gary Harris back as a bench player instead of a starter. That is certainly an option. They need to add a little bit more depth, I think, and secure and shore up their depth so that they have guys that they trust to play in the playoffs. The Magic played a 10-man rotation in the playoffs. Whether they should do that or not is certainly a fair question, but there were players that got targeted and struggled in the playoffs that the Magic, probably need something more reliable from. And again, they will be adding Jett Howard to this mix, hopefully. They will be adding Anthony Black. They will have another rookie that they'll be trying to figure out how to develop. There is a lot that this Magic team is going to add and improve on before we even get to free agency and before we get to the offseason transaction period. And so, no, the Magic shouldn't stand pat. They need to add something to this team. I'm not pretending otherwise, but not being so proactive, not making moves for the sake of making moves. That is actually a sound strategy, and that actually fits how this Magic team is built and the culture that they're building. Because remember, it's about that North Star. It's about the DNA of this team and maintaining the DNA of this team. And and this season was incredibly successful. And the Magic are more focused on adding the right pieces to this team rather than simply adding any pieces to this team. And maybe, we'll talk about the battle lines and the narratives of this offseason a little bit more in the future here. This team does have something that works, and we can't forget that. And that's why the Magic probably aren't in a hurry to add these humongous names that are out there. they're looking to continue fostering and growing and developing these young players into the championship team they know they can be. They just need that maybe little boost to get there. It's not a rocket ship. It's not strapping, a huge engine to it. It's a couple booster rockets, perhaps. But that's what we'll unpack over the next 2 months. That's your introduction to free agency and what the Magic are trying to do. We'll talk plenty more about free agency and how the Magic get better. We're going to start that conversation tomorrow when we talk about why the Magic lost in the playoffs and what that means for the team moving forward. We'll get to that on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Magic. But that's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Of course, find me on Twitter at @PhilipRR_OMD. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all the fun based on podcasts to your podcast-enabled listening device. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can follow us there on Twitter at @OMagicDaily. And of course, be sure to check out my Patreon page, the Orlando Magic Hub, for even more Magic content. You can find that at patreon.com/OrlandoMagicHub. Now that you're done listening to me, be sure to check out the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube and now available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. That's going to do it for me today, though. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. For Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Philip Rossman-Reich. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.